Well, howdy, you guys. And I'll say good morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you are in the world. And hey, give us a shout out. And let's just make sure our friend Jared is in there.
I am in here. I'm
Oh,
not
good.
stuck
Okay.
this
Just
time.
checking. Sometimes you are, sometimes you're not. Okay, good. We got Jared here. And I want to welcome you guys. Give us a shout out wherever you are so we know. I'm guessing Sue is here because she told me she was going to join us. Yeah, and hit that like button if you don't mind, because somehow that alerts the YouTube world that we're on live and you guys should join us. And this is going to be an important episode. I'll talk in a minute about some lessons I've learned lately, or not really new lessons for me, but they have underscored things I've already come across along the way. A very important lesson for all you guys, for all of us. There is Sue. Yeah. Hey, Sue in Sun Valley. How is it out there? What's the weather like? We're having beautiful weather in Carmel. We came through intense storms on the coast of California. You probably heard that Joe Biden was actually out here because one of our towns really close to us took a huge beating. I mean, a huge beating, and it's going to require some government help to rebuild things. So we've gone from drought to intense storms. But frankly, we're all happy to have the rain. We love water, and California has been in such a long drought. It's nice to get out of that. Hi, Grace from San Francisco. I was just up in San Francisco over the weekend. And unfortunately, we had the unpleasurable moment of seeing our dearly beloved 49ers lose two quarterbacks in one game, and of course we lost. It's, as somebody put it, it's very difficult to win a game with no quarterback. Anyway, Moser in sunny Brazil, hello. Okay, guys, I'm going to go ahead and get started, but first, I want to remind you, actually, if you guys haven't done so, would you please subscribe and enable the bell, because that'll give you an alarm that lets you know we've got broadcasts going on. And our friends at Bay Photo Lab have been helping us for a long time and will help you make prints. So that's the deal. Print something amazing, absolutely, and you're going to get 30% off on press printed products. These are really cool. I've used them a lot. That's cards, that's books. You can make a book here with their stuff. You can make various different kinds of cards. 30% off on those. You guys should take advantage of that. 15% off on acrylic prints. I definitely use those. I have those hanging in a gallery downtown in my town of Carmel. 15% off is a really good deal. And as always, you're going to get 25% off on your first order. So after the show, head over to our friends at Bay Photo Lab and do what they said, let's print something amazing, okay? This is really important. Okay, so we've had a couple of guys join us here, Gary from Oklahoma and Gear from Norway. Hello, you guys. And Jennifer from Germany. Jennifer from Germany. I don't recall seeing you here, so welcome. Thanks for joining us. Okay, I want to tell you a story. This is not my story, but it could be my story. I take inspiration from all sorts of things, and if you've read my books, you know that it's really important to look for sources of inspiration, things that can resonate for you. That's why I say go to museums, look in books of photographs, but don't just think in terms of photography for your inspiration. You can get it anywhere. And I get a lot of my inspiration from films and from documentaries in particular. I love documentaries. Well, there is on the Disney Channel, there's a series called Light and Magic, which is a documentary series about industrial light and magic. I've been there, and I was going to bring up some of my photographs, forgot to do that. It's in San Francisco in the Presidio, which was the Army base, right? and it was deactivated and turned into, it's a beautiful setting in San Francisco, and George Lucas moved his Industrial Light and Magic to the Presidio. It's incredible. Anyway, it's a documentary about Industrial Light and Magic, which of course was formed in order to make Star Wars. Now, here's the story. Very interesting. George Lucas in this series said, I've been asked what's the secret to making films. And he kind of pauses, and you think he's going to give you like this long dissertation about, go to film school, learn screenwriting, learn how to shoot, learn all this, learn that. He said it comes down to one thing, and it really comes down to one word. What do you think, before I say this word, visualize in your own mind, what would this man say who's done these remarkable films? What's this one word going to come out to? What do you think it is? You may or may not be right, but the word is persistence. He said it all comes down to persistence. Now, his story of making Star Wars is very interesting because he had to persist through all manner of obstacles. I mean, more than you can imagine. His very first film was a sci-fi film, and it didn't go over very well. In fact, Francis Ford Coppola, who basically said, look, he hired George to direct, and he said, make a comedy, make something normal every day. So he made American Graffiti, which is about a little town in the Central Valley called Modesto, which is a nothing town, I got to tell you. I hope nobody's on the call, on the Zoom, not the Zoom, on our broadcast from Modesto. It really doesn't have a lot of appeal, at least to me. And it's about how, they're driving cars up and down and going to the drive-in. I don't personally resonate with that movie very much, but it got his foot in the door and got him recognized. And the next thing he said he wanted to do was science fiction. He got shot down, I think, by every major studio said, no, people don't watch science fiction. It's only for kids. It's out of date. It's like Flash Gordon, that was in the 30s. And everything you can imagine just shot down the idea right from the beginning. And he finally did find a producer who was willing to take him on, but he wasn't even that interested in the movie himself. He liked George Lucas, and he thought, well, if I help him with this, maybe I can use him for other films. This is how unpopular Star Wars was at the beginning. We think of it as a household name, like Disney or something. It was not. And he ran into all manner of problems. He was filming in England, but he had his special effects. Now, he had to create special effects out of nothing. There were no special effects houses like today there are. If you said, it cost you some money, but you could pretty much, anything you think of, you could go to any number of different special effects houses and they're going to make it for you. He didn't have such a thing, so he had to assemble a team of just wild and woolly characters that some of them had done special effects on their own as hobbyists, and some of them had done some with some corny movies, and you name it. He had to assemble these guys in Van Nuys in LA, put them in this old funky warehouse in Van Nuys right near the airport. And then they didn't have equipment. Equipment didn't exist, so they had to build their own equipment. Everything was from the ground up. And while he's filming in England, the special effects team is getting put together. He is not able to supervise it directly because he's in England. So they're coming along at a pace that does not match the film release at all. They're taking a lot of time because they're building the stuff from the ground up. He flies back, does not like what he sees, gets really upset with them, ends up in the hospital, right? they tell him to take it easy. You know, he's having a stress heart attack, I think. They tell him to unstress himself. He says, no, I can't unstress myself. And he goes back to England, goes back to work. Somehow overcomes all these different things. Meanwhile, the actors in England were not even that committed to the film. Did you know that? They weren't even that into the film. Alec Guinness, I mean, I guess these guys were ready to walk out, and none of them wanted to do overtime. So you had to make sure the shoot was all done within, you know, whatever their schedule was. This is crazy. Films don't work that way. Sometimes you go 18 hours shooting, depending on what's going on. So he had to confine everything into their normal work hours. Meanwhile, the guys in California are putting their whole thing together, and he has to fly back. Back and forth. Talk about persistence. When it was finally done, he still wasn't really happy with it. His vision did not match what he saw. Does that ring a bell for anybody? Do you ever have that happen with your photographs? Your vision, what you wanted. You saw this beautiful sunset or whatever. You know, you thought this is the coolest photograph in the world, and then you get back and you look at it on your computer and it's like, nothing. Does not match. This is called the creative gap. It's in my book, right? I talk about that. So there was a big creative gap between what he envisioned and what came out. But it was too late. The film had to go on. Luke Skywalker, Mark Hamill, actually had an automobile accident, so they couldn't reshoot some of the scenes he wanted to reshoot, so they were stuck with him. Anyway, opening day was a big fizzle, apparently. Did not resonate. This is disaster for any film. You know, that opening day, that opening weekend is the whole thing. Somehow, and I don't know exactly what caught fire, but somehow it started to catch fire. And there was a big opening at the Chinese Theater in Hollywood, which is where a lot of films had opened, and apparently it was just backed up down the street. Somehow or another, this thing caught fire. And the rest
Actually,
is
I happen to know what it was that did it.
What was
Mark.
it?
There was another really famous filmmaker who had a film that was going to come out at the same time.
Yeah.
And they delayed their film. So,
Okay.
like, all these people had been expecting one film, and then it got delayed, like, a couple of months or something. And so Star Wars happened to be just at the right time to pick up an audience of people looking for a new kind of film.
Isn't that amazing? So this story is one to remember, you guys. Persistence. And in my critiquing, I'm going to make that kind of the underscored thing of where persistence could have paid off. And many times you've heard me say this, if you just waited a little longer, maybe you would have gotten the shot that you wanted. Ansel Adams famously waited 9 hours for the clouds to move in the way he wanted. Bob Holmes talks about waiting for that shot. Persistence. So that's one aspect of persistence in your photography. But there's another aspect. Let's say you are trying to move into being a pro photographer, and that's your goal. And you go at it, and you market yourself, and you put your stuff out there, and you just sell a little bit of this, and a little bit of that, and you're not sure this will ever be your day job, and you're ready to give up. Right around the corner could be your big break. I think I've told you my story. I was pushing on a lot of different things. I mean, I had stuff in magazines, and I had shows, and I did portrait sessions, and I did just about any kind of photography I could think of, but it wasn't enough to support my family. And in the kind of the 11th hour, I stumbled into video, and that's when I got my big break with SanDisk, where they paid me to go out and interview great photographers. And of course that opened my world of photography, because guess what? I was getting educated the entire time by these amazing photographers. So it served a multiple purpose for me. But, you know, I could have easily given up before that. So you gotta persist. You gotta take your goal, take your dream, your vision, never give up. Let that be a lesson to you. Okay? And by the way, check out, there's a lot of other really valuable information in those industrial, or it's called Light and Magic on Disney. I do invite you to watch it. Okay, with that, let's dive into our critiques. So, Jared, what have we got here? Here's the first one. Who is this from?
All right. This one's from Michael, and this was taken with an iPhone 13 Pro using the ultra-wide lens. And he titled it Look Up.
I want to just note, Jennifer said creative gap. Oh, yeah, I know that. Yeah, we all know that, right? And how do you get out of the creative gap? You persist, but you also learn. You know, you learn from your mistakes, and you come back and you go, okay, that didn't work. What can we do? I like this shot a lot. I mean, it's got geometry in it, which is, really a great composition tool. You'll read about it in my book. And it's got a lot of different interest in terms of what we're looking at. You know, it's a interesting set of geometric shapes. You've got the spheres of the lights, but really it's the ceiling. And that, to me, this would fit into a series of photographs. It could be standalone, but I would think it would more serve as part of a series. In other words, you're taking, I don't know, maybe some kind of little documentary of this building and people in it, and this is one of the images within it. So good. It definitely works. Good one. And I might tell you another thing from George in a minute, but let's just stick with the persistence one for a minute and see if we can find some examples of where persistence paid off.
Here's a very interesting one. So this is a series.
These.
Yeah, so this is the Project Euphoria, explores the relationship between music and human emotions, and I thought we'd take a look at a few of these just because I couldn't pick one, but I really dig this.
Yeah, these are cool. I do too. Wow. See, you know what I like about this is innovative. This is something we haven't seen before. That one really, go back to that one. That's the one that to me really stands out because you've got different things going on, but you've got a gesture and we've got a definite center of interest here with the guy. And that's the one that resonates the most with me. Go through the other ones just again, let me see. There's some gesturing and whatnot. Yeah, go ahead. That one, see, I don't see the gesture there. I don't see. This is kind of interesting as a design, but I don't have a center of interest, so I kind of lose it. But go back to that first one. Yeah, first one to me is the one that really pulls my eye because we're looking at the subject, and his expression is, right there in the center. But all this blurriness stuff going on around him adds a really interesting layer. So bravo, well done on these. I will give you anybody bonus points for innovation. Let's take a look at George Lucas. They had to innovate every single thing. One thing that they did that was very different than any other special effects up to that time is very simple, but very hard to, the idea is simple, but very hard to implement, and that is that all special effects up to that point, the camera was stationary, and they had the objects moving around. Now, that makes it kind of look fake, because if you think about it, if you're out in space and you're in another ship, what are you going to be doing? You're going to be moving while the objects are moving. That's going to add realism to it. So that was the first time they had the camera move and the objects, and that added untold amounts of equipment stuff that they had to figure out. The equipment did not exist for that. So here's an example of that. There's motion, and that's another thing George Lucas said. Films are kinetic. Kinetic means motion, in motion. Films are kinetic. And that's why Star Wars has so much kinetic energy to it. it's not about, sitting down with Luke Skywalker looking stationary inside the cockpit. It's motion, all this motion. And he pointed out the very first films were about motion. The very first film that was ever made in near my town here, near where I live, in Palo Alto, California, by Moybrick, was a horse running along, and they had 24 different cameras, which gave them 24 frames per second. Very first. So this is almost like a motion picture here. So bravo. Okay. You're getting more George Lucas stories here. All right. He is a guy I want to meet. I have him on my list of people to interview.
Oh, that would be really amazing.
Not easy to finagle that, but I'm hopeful, and I will persist. I have already asked. Getting through his layers of people is the first. That's usually the challenge with any of these big names. Okay.
All right. Our next one here. This is from our good friend Susie, friend of the show, Susie. And let me find wandering the country roads in Athens, Ohio with my camera, looking for something that would surprise me.
I like that a lot. I like it. I love the VW. I'm a fan. I used to drive a VW Bug just like that. No, it was a soft top. Across the Golden Gate Bridge to the San Francisco Art Institute where I was studying photography. When I wasn't hitchhiking, days that I didn't have access to that VW Bug, I had to hitchhike. Yes, I grew up in the 60s. Okay, this is cool. The bug is the focal point here. It is a punctuation point. It's kind of a big one, but it really is. Otherwise, there wouldn't be anything to see. There wouldn't be anything going on. But the rows of, how is that? It's just a hillside that's plowed up like that? I don't know. But anyway, that adds an interesting texture, a lot of texture in this, and lines and geometry. But that bug popping out of the ground, like, wow, that's really cool. I love it. That's a good one. It's a keeper. You might, the green is interesting. All that green does add interest. I'm just speculating what that would look like as a black and white, but I think you're better leaving it the way it is, because black and white would tend to just get lost. See, I can visualize. Do you guys do that, by the way? Do you visualize what it could look like in black and white or color? That's an important thing to, as a black and white photographer, we kind of had to develop that sense. You were shooting black and white. You had to look at a scene and go, is this going to look like anything if I shoot it in black and white? And a lot of times it wouldn't. You didn't waste any film. Okay, good. Who's next?
All right. This is from Grace.
I recognize that street. Geary Street in
went
San
on
Francisco.
my first photo walk in the Tenderloin of San Francisco and saw this couple in Lightroom. I did some exploring of desaturating the background a bit to help highlight the couple.
Yeah, I see that. I've done that with only one photograph of this Citron in Paris. I desaturated the background. It's a technique I've seen. Some people use it way too much. All these techniques are like, to me, it's like seasoning in cooking. Chili flakes can be good in moderation, but don't put chili flakes on everything, especially on your pancakes or cereal, although maybe, hey, could work. So my only thing compositionally, the background is competing with the subjects quite a bit. So you could deal with that two different ways. One, shallower depth of field, because you have a pretty wide depth of field. I can see the cars in focus. So I would narrow that depth of field. I'd probably shoot them at 2.8. You could do that in Lightroom also. You could mask them and make a shallower depth of field. But the other thing I would recommend is move this way. So when you shoot them, move over to your left. When you shoot them, they wouldn't be competing with that background. There would be the sidewalk. So you're leaving your subject more plainly in view. I would prefer that. You do have some cool things. You got their feet, raised, which shows motion there. Yeah. And I like where you're going with this. Just move over to your left. You have to move fast, but you've got a little time. Move fast over to your left and get a shot against the sidewalk, so you're not competing with all that background stuff. And then if you couldn't get that, you could try, a shallower depth of field. All that stuff has to happen really fast. When I talk about visualization, I'm not thinking you're sitting around and, smoking a pipe, waiting for this thing to come out of your mind. I'm talking about something that's just like that. You go, wow, I got to move over here. Bam, that's visualization. That's a skill you want to develop, like to be really fast. But your elements are there. Those would be my suggestions to make it really move to the next level. Okay.
All right.
Who's next?
Our next one, this is from Patrick, and he titled it Love.
There you go. It works. And, that's a shot that's always going to work, right? My daughter got married on the beach in Carmel, and she has that shot. And if you're anywhere near the beach, you should get that shot. It's a classic. It will always work. Bambi Cantrell uses it. Wedding photographers use it because it just gives you, the perfect match of the couple and the ocean and the clouds. It's always going to work. It's just, you're never going to lose on this shot. I would also make this depth of field a little shallower, just because that wave is a little bit in focus in the background there. This is a really easy fix, guys, in post. Don't be afraid to use your Lightroom or Photoshop. They've made it really easy to mask the subject, and then you can just blur the background. And there's several ways that you can do that. In Photoshop, you have more tools to work with, but in Lightroom, you can take your clarity and just move it all the way over. You can take your texture, and you can also sharpness. You can dial those all down, but you have more tools to add a blur in Photoshop. But that's my only thing. And the only other thing is I'd probably work with the clouds a little bit. I'd probably darken them. I'd play around with that a little bit just to give it a little more contrast. But you've done a really good job with just a very classic photograph that's should be in your repertoire. There's nothing wrong with that. Just have it there. You could, while you're masking, also, I would probably bring the shadows up for the couple a little bit. These are tiny adjustments, guys. This is not, just bring them up a little bit, because you notice the sand in the foreground is a little brighter. Yeah, there's some little more sun over to the left there. You could just help them along when you're doing your masking. Just bring the shadows up, play around with that a little bit, just to bring them out a little bit more. This is all post-processing. And then again, when you're shooting it, you might consider shoot it at 2.8 and just let the background really blur out. But good one. Okay, I hope these comments are helping you guys. If you don't agree with them, that's fine. I don't expect you to agree or disagree. Christopher from New York, hey. Southern Maryland. I have a whole bunch of family in Maryland, in Baltimore. There used to be a bakery called Silber's Bakery. It was a big time bakery. Anyway, what's next? Who's next here?
All right, this is from a new member in the community, so welcome, Paul. And this is Sunset over Tokyo Bay Rainbow
Wow.
Bridge and Tokyo Tower in the background, shot in 2014.
Shot in what?
2014.
Oh, 2014. Got it. Okay. Yeah, this is cool. It's got a lot of interesting elements to it. Your Ansel Adams has this very cool photograph of some rocks in the foreground, and behind the rocks are peaks, and they're mirroring each other. And you're using that same element. I like that kind of mirroring of geometric forms because you've got the angle, the triangle pyramid shape of the rock being mirrored by the bridge, and that works really well. You've got a long exposure, I see, with the wave as being blurred out. So I'm assuming you probably had this on a tripod. If not, you've got a good steady hand. And that works really well. You might consider, I'm just, visualizing this for myself, but you might consider a shallower depth of field on the bridge. But on the other hand, I'm going to say, it works because you're really showing the contrast between these two elements. And contrast, by the way, is a compositional tool. It's in my book. And also the lines, the mood lines that you have on the bridge there, that is a compositional tool. You got a lot of different compositional, and that stripe of pinkish light, yeah, definitely adds interest to it. So overall, I believe, this is a good photograph and it works really well. And thanks for joining us. I don't recall another photograph from Japan, so you may be the first. Good job.
All right. This is from our friend Christopher, who I believe is with us in chat. Let me find if there was a caption that came with these. Nope, there isn't. So
that's cool, Christopher. Washington Square in New York City, famous location in the beatnik days. All the beatnik guys would hang out there and play guitar and stuff.
Oh, I apologize.
What's going on here?
That was a mistake. I was trying to get a notification out, and that guy came up. I apologize.
No worries. Okay, so this is a cool use of a slow shutter speed framed perfectly within the arch. You see, this is if you hadn't framed it in the arch, it would compete and it wouldn't work. So that's a really good one, Christopher. You're a great photographer, and this is another example of your skills. Waiting for the person, I don't know if I guess they're set up there doing something, some kind of dance, probably got some music going. You have a long exposure. Maybe you've got a Sony with really good stabilization. Maybe you put it on a tripod. I'm guessing it was probably handheld. It works really well. It's a good one. Thank you.
All right, I think we got time for a couple more before you have to head out.
Got to bail out here in a second. Oh,
this one
awesome.
is from Amir, a good friend of the show.
Awesome. Immediately, I like it. I just love lightning. It's remember what George Lucas said? He said films are kinetic. Well, how much more kinetic energy can you get than a lightning bolt? I think that's really good advice from him. And going back to Christopher's a moment ago, we had kinetic energy there. That's going to work. It doesn't work all the time because sometimes you don't want that. But in this case, these are two different examples of kinetic energy, raw energy. And I think we're going to be fascinated as people on this planet with the amount of power that comes out of there. So the other thing I like about it is the lights on the right edge there. And Bob Holmes makes a point of using the blue hour, which this is kind of in the blue hour, isn't it? Or it's just really dark, so it's not probably technically the blue hour, but just because of the clouds, it's giving us a blue tint cast to this thing. But he talks about using multiple light sources, colors. So you have two different color temperatures going on here. You've got the really warm color temperature from the lights on the right, and really kind of, I'm going to guess, a reading off that lightning bolt would put it at, I don't know, maybe around 4,000 or something. Just a guess. But anyway, it doesn't really matter what the readings are. It's just very different. You can see it's much whiter from the lightning bolt and very warm on the right. So that's also another great element. And it just draws your eye. You don't have any question what the center of attention is. That's it. And it's an event that you captured. But because of where it is captured, it adds a lot of other interest to it. A lot of other kind of layers are going on here. The clouds and, and the cliffs on the right and the water. There's a lot of different areas of interest to add to this. So, bravo.
And Amir says it was in the Blue Hour.
It is in the Blue Hour. Okay, good. You're right. It's all blue.
Good timing then.
Yeah, Blue Hour. Remember, Bob Holmes talks about use those other light sources to augment your Blue Hour, and you did. So that's awesome. Okay, good work for being out in the Blue Hour and capturing that lightning bolt. Don't get hit. I have a story. I'll tell you the whole thing sometime. Being on top of a mountain as a young mountaineering instructor, getting up to the top, and the lightning started striking, and it was so close that the bushes were smoldering near us. That's not a good feeling, because if you're the tallest thing out there, which we were, guess what? You become the lightning rod. Not a good thing. And we made it off that mountain in record time. Down low. You wanted to get off the peak and down low as quickly as you could before one of us became a lightning rod. Okay.
I think if we've got time for one more, our
One more.
new friend Jennifer from Germany has joined the group, and she submitted a photo. So.
Awesome, Jennifer. Let's see
And
what you
here
got.
it is.
Hey, good work. Jennifer Moe. Cool. And look at that. I love music. I love musicians. It's interesting how he's holding those sticks. I first thought he had his hand on the cymbal, but I don't think he does. It's in front of the cymbal. Because, a lot of times they'll do that to stop
I think he's
it.
reaching to grab it or
What are those sticks?
modify the sound.
They're like flat sticks. I didn't know. I'm not a drummer, but they look like flat pieces of wood, which is not your normal shape of stick. Anyway, this works, Jennifer. And I'm sure you have a lot of other ones. You might want to just look and see. I'm just curious what else you have in your series here. The only thing I would probably want to pull back a little bit, just to get a little, I feel it's a little crowded. This is just me. It's a little crowded. I'd almost like to see him get more of the drum kit. Just pull back a little bit. That's just my first thought. When I first saw it, I just go by my first impression, by the way. I just think, I like it, but I'd like it to be a little more, tell a little more story. That's what you do when you pull back. You're going to get more of the story in, and maybe even show one of the other musicians. But that's my instant thought. I'm just going to tell you what I see and then go from there. Otherwise, it's got an interesting expression from him. He's enjoying what he's doing. And it's got some geometry in it. So good one, Jennifer. Thanks for joining us. And thank you guys, all of you. I love seeing your work. Really, it's awesome. And please do continue to work with each other in the AYP club. That's what it's there for. It's for you. And we will continue to have, critiques in the future. And we're cooking up a lot of new stuff. So take what I've said today about persistence and see how that applies to you. Here's an assignment. Everybody's got a notebook, right? You're following my advice. You've all got notebooks. You should. I have so many notebooks. I use them constantly. Here's one right on my desk. This is my official AYP notebook. So take this notebook, right at the top of the page, persistence. And then underneath that, write down, how does this apply to you? Where do you need more persistence? You can take it in the big picture, pardon the pun. What do you need to persist with in your own career as a photographer? What do you need to persist with? I am the most persistent when I'm going after a sponsor or an idea that I have. I just don't give up. I really don't. Just like George Lucas had to beat on numbers of doors, and all around Hollywood they were slamming the door on him. He had to persist because he believed in that idea. So when you've got a vision, you got to persist with it. And it could apply to photographing. You've got the scene, you got everything right, but it's not there yet. Come back to it over and over again until it is right. Persist with your ideas. Persist in your own education. This is what it's all about, guys, is constantly learning. Persistence. Get a schedule together that you persist with. I am such a creature of habit and schedules. I wake up, I do the same thing, I study hour and a half, 2 hours sometimes before I do anything with coffee, and that's it. And that's my daily ritual. I always take a walk in the afternoon. I'm very persistent about these things because I feel like when you put that kind of format there, structure, whatever you want to call it, it allows you to build your day around it. If it's all random all the time, it's very difficult for things to persist in a random environment. Think about that, okay? So write that word down at the top of your page and then write down all the ways that can apply to you. And then when you find the one that really resonates the most, make sure you do it. I'd like to hear your feedback on this exercise. Go to my Instagram here. I'm going to give you guys this. I'm going to put that in my Instagram, that exercise, okay? And then you guys can tell me how you applied it, okay? If you haven't already followed me, please do follow me there, because it's kind of like how I keep the conversation going when I'm not here on YouTube, so you guys can do that. Okay, good. So thank you guys for joining us. And do remember, please do subscribe and enable the bell so you don't miss any of our good stuff coming your way. You can like our stuff, you can share it, leave your comments for sure. And last but not least, remember, say it with me, remember to get out and capture your own images of life. Love you guys. Stay creative. See you soon.